SaaS Summit 2022. Please welcome Cecilia Judman, Events Marketing Manager at Redgate.
Hello everyone, I'm Cecilia Judman, Events Marketing Manager at Redgate. I joined Redgate 2 weeks before the pandemic started back in 2022. So I'm super thrilled to be here in Seattle at my first in-person Past Data Community Summit. Hands up to anyone else who's here for the first time. Wow. Welcome everyone, whether you're new like me to the stage or whether you've been here since Pass's inception. Welcome to everyone who's traveled from near and far to be with us today. And welcome to everyone who's joining us live or online on demand. Today is day 2 of our Past Data Community Summit, and I hope you enjoyed your first day. Yesterday, we heard from Rohan Kumar, Corporate Vice President of Microsoft Azure Data, on transforming your data estate. Plus, you had a whopping selection of 123 sessions to choose from. I know that's impossible to attend everything, and we don't want to overwhelm you with content. So don't worry if you've missed anything. All the live sessions will be recorded and available to you in your event portal. I'd like to encourage everyone to make the most of your summit experience by joining sessions, but also attending the networking events. Our speakers will be there too, in person in the community zone, and online in spatial chat. I'm new to this community, but the warm welcome that I have received has been absolutely incredible. So I'd encourage everyone else to do the same. Connect with each other. Speaking of connecting, it was great to see so many of you at the exhibitor reception last night. Thank you to everyone who stopped by to speak to all our amazing sponsors. We sure had a blast at the Redgate booth playing the Wheel of SQL Monitor. But the fun doesn't stop there. While you're in between sessions, make sure you stop by the exhibitor hall, in person and online at our online booths. We have lots of awesome sponsors, both in person and online, offering great prizes, content, and so much more. So start some conversations to get to know them. They want to learn about your issues and how their products and services can help you. Special thanks in particular to our premier sponsor Microsoft, diamond sponsor AWS, and gold sponsor Dell, and all our other sponsors. This event wouldn't have been possible without you all. At Redgate, we're really excited to host the summit's homecoming, and so we're bringing you more fun, more action, and more learning this year. Our solutions experts, as well as our rock stars Grant Fritchie, Kathy Kellenberger, and Steve Jones, will all be at our booth to host exclusive technical and educational sessions. During today's lunch break, for instance, Kathy is hosting an in-person Redgate University course on how to set up a Flyway desktop project. Come check it out. You might also have noticed a little mini Lego Steve around the convention center and online. And yes, you can get your very own limited Lego Steve at our Redgate booth. And now, please put your hands together for the real Steve Jones.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be back here in Seattle and see all of you. So I'm honored today I get to open the keynote today on day 2. And for my part, I want to go back a little bit and talk about some history. The summit was born in 1999, and Redgate was born in 1999 as well. And across these last 23 years, both of them and my career have been intertwined quite a bit. So I want to go back to 1999. Was anybody at the first summit back then? Nobody? I was there. I was a young DBA. It was in Chicago. I convinced my boss to send me to this new conference. As you can see, I was working really, really hard. My wife caught a picture of me one night at home. I was working late and fell asleep. But I was excited to go to this conference put on by a new organization, the Professional Association for SQL Server. They were focused on data, and I was excited because I knew data was in my future. And so this is the hotel, this is the program, this big, thick paper thing that we used to get all of our information on. Some of you might remember that. And as I flipped through this, I was excited because there were people whose work I had read and learned about, people whose I'd seen their names in books and magazines. And one of those people was Kaylin Delaney. Kaylin's been an icon in our industry for the last 30 years. She's written many books and magazines, including Inside SQL Server 7. I had read the 6.0, 6.5, and then the 7.0 versions. And so I was excited to see her talk. I got to learn about TempDB and SQL Server 7. And afterwards, I walked down to the stage. I got to shake her hand, and she answered a question for me, helped me solve a problem at work. And I learned something that day. I learned not only something about SQL Server, but something about community and how we can share information and help each other grow. That started this friendship across 20 years where people have taught me and I've had the opportunity to teach them, and I've gotten a chance to be with Kaylin all around the world at various events. Now, Compass started this journey across 20 years of coming here to summits. And I've been here most years, and in that time, I've shared a lot of memories. I've had the opportunity to learn from people, be inspired by them, to share information, and I've had the opportunity to do that for others, trying to pay it forward and help others in my own way. There's something amazing about this community as we share information and help each other become better at working with data. Now, back in 1999, most of us went from session to session to session, and we took notes on paper. We didn't use laptops because we didn't have A, laptops we could carry, B, we didn't have batteries that would last more than a few hours. And then at night, often we would go home back to the hotel room, and we would dial in via modem. Some of you might have done this, and gotten some work done at home. Now, this event has changed quite a bit in the years. We still go to sessions, we still learn from each other, and it's very exciting. But we've also added many social events here. So we've had various fundraisers through the years. The Women in Technology panel will happen today. That's a very exciting event. But we had prayer breakfasts and veterans groups get together. We've had the game night. We had SQL karaoke a few nights ago. The SQL run takes place most mornings here at the summit. And we had the SQL Server Central Party. Anybody been to the SQL Server Central Party? We used to open the summit with that every year, and it was very exciting for me, often the highlight of my year, because I got a bunch of referral money, and I got to spend it all on prizes that I gave away to people, hire a casino company to cater it, and it was just amazing. And hopefully I'll find a way to do that again in the future. I've been to a lot of conferences in my life. I've been blessed to go to DevOps conferences, developer conferences, SQL conferences, and other things. And at so many conferences, people do just go from session to session and then back to their hotel room. But here we share not only knowledge, we share our lives. We truly are the SQL family, and it's an amazing thing to see. Now, this summit has grown quite a bit across these 23 years. In 1999, it was relatively small. We talked about managing a SQL Server instance or a few of them. We talked about client-server development or three-tier architectures and how do we integrate with .NET. And we were just starting the data warehousing conversation with SQL Server 7. 3 years ago was the last time we were together. In 2019, the conference had tripled in size. Not only had the number of attendees and sessions grown, but we've added these 21 full-day pre-conference sessions where you can get this just-in-time learning from these experts in our community. And I don't see that at a lot of conferences. Many of them have 2 or 3 or 4 pre-cons and that's it. Here, we've really come together for a full week. And not only do we have a bigger conference, but it's grown wider. We now talk about Databricks and ML and Kubernetes all the time. Power BI has exploded. I was amazed to see Patrick on stage, all the things that are changing in Power BI. It's absolutely incredible. As somebody that works all around the world, it's nice to see data governance and data masking and privacy become more important because, face it, in the US, we're not very concerned about that stuff. But it's nice to see it at the conference. And of course, the cloud overlays everything that we do. The cloud is in every conversation, every session. We're always thinking about the cloud. Whether you like it or hate it, it's still part of what we do. In 1999, Redgate was just getting started. 2 friends from Cambridge University decided they want to build a software company. So they founded this company. They started building this bug tracking software called Aardvark. Anybody use Aardvark? I never have either. One of these founders was an engineer, and what he realized was that making changes in development and getting them to production in a database was hard. Some of you have probably had that challenge as well. So in true hacker fashion, he decided to write a tool to make that easier. And that tool became SQL Compare. Then he realized that other people probably had this problem, and so he started selling it. Not as important as Aardvark, but it was still available. And over time, it became very, very popular, and it started to become the foundation for our company. Now, across 22 years, Redgate has grown from those couple of products to many, many more. A lot of you have probably used the SQL tool belt, data compare, packager, doc, something else in there. One of them that's near and dear to my heart is dependency tracker, because there was a summit a long time ago. My partners, Andy, Brian, and myself were talking to the founder of Redgate, and we said, we'd love to see the tree behind SQL Compare. Right? SQL Compare is great, but we want to know what's behind it so that as we perform development, we know everything we need to work on. And the next year, they built Dependency Tracker and released it here at the summit. But Redgate has grown beyond that. I've been at Redgate for 16 years. As of last week, 16 years at Redgate. And in the last decade, I've worked with them and the teams and customers to talk a lot about solutions, about team solutions, because we know that building software is becoming more challenging. We have to become better at it over time. And so we've expanded to try to help you do that. We want to meet the needs that you have. So we do a lot of research. We talk to a lot of you. And we've come up with these solutions that help us ensure we have repeatable, reliable deployments across all of our environments. And what's more, we don't want to just do SQL Server, because we know many of you have other databases. As a matter of fact, I would say that multi-database environments are here to stay, and the complexity is growing. And so at Redgate, we are expanding across different platforms that you might use. Some of you might know this tool. I think it's our most popular tool. If you're like me, you can't write code without it. I feel crippled. Now, SQL Prompt was something I ran into when I was doing Database Weekly back in the early 2000s. Somebody just like one of you had built a tool to put IntelliSense in Query Analyzer. Some of you might remember Query Analyzer. I thought that was a fantastic idea, so I sent a note to Redgate and said, you guys should build this tool. They ended up buying it and then rewriting it again and making it absolutely incredible. I mean, today it's a phenomenal piece of software. But this is actually our first DevOps story. About 10 years ago, the team that was working on this decided not only did they want to release new versions of great software, they wanted to respond quickly to your feature requests and bug reports. So they started a pair program with their goal of releasing fixes within 1 week of hearing about them. And they did a fantastic job. I think that first year they released over 100 times when most of our products released once or twice. And that attitude has pervaded everything at Redgate. So now, today, we live the DevOps story just like we're trying to help you do. And we release most of our products every week or two. But Redgate is not just about software. I mean, we want to sell you software, by the way, but we are more than that. So I've been here 16 years, and I've said it many times internally, but I'll say it here, that Redgate is the kind of company that I would want to build if I was building another company. They really have a fantastic culture, and they really believe in community. And they've supported that. So I founded SQL Server Central over 20 years ago. My partners Brian Knight and Andy Warren and I put that together. We built an incredible community with the goal of helping you become better at your jobs. That was our mission at the company. And Redgate purchased the company in 2006 and continued to support that. They really let me run SQL Server Central independently and do what I need to do to help you. And they do more than that. They have Simple Talk. They support user groups and events all over the world. And I think the best example of this is SQL Saturday. So early on, Brian, Andy, and I were coming to the summit every year, and we realized this was magical. It's amazing to see all of you in person. And we decided we wanted to bring that to local communities. So we started SQL Saturday as a way to bring a little bit of the summit to your local community. And after a few years, it had blown up. So many of you have come and attended and supported and volunteered. So we gave it to Pass because we thought it was a community asset. Last year, Redgate decided that when they acquired the assets of Pass, SQL Saturday was still a community asset. And so they donated it away to a charitable foundation. So Andy and I still run an independent US charitable foundation that helps run SQL Saturday and keep it going. And I think that's an amazing community gesture that they gave that away. Now we're here at the summit this week. Redgate is hosting the summit. We're glad all of you came. And we take our responsibility to guide the summit in the future seriously. Last year we had this opportunity to acquire the assets of PASS, and there were a lot of meetings, a lot of Zoom meetings. We weren't together. And in those meetings, we were trying to debate the pros and cons, good idea, bad idea, all that stuff. And the founder of Redgate, Simon Galbraith, said that he'd been coming here for 20 years, and there was something magical about this place, about seeing the best and brightest of the data professionals together every year. And he said, we can't let that die. And that was the reason we decided to move forward with this and keep the summit going. Now, last year we couldn't be together. We were online, but we had over 10,000 people attend, which was phenomenal. It's the biggest summit ever. This year we have a number of you still online, we welcome you and it's great, but it's wonderful to have you all back in person, and we look forward to how we can grow this and make it better in the future. Now that's my quick history lesson, my time for today. I want to bring out the CEO of Redgate Software now to talk a little bit about the future of our community and our careers as database professionals. So please welcome the CEO of Redgate Software, Jakub Lamik.
Thank you, Steve. What an incredible privilege it is to be here. I think it's been also an incredible privilege to listen about the last 20 years of PASS, how this community came together, how it supported each other, and how it evolved. And I completely understand why so many of you here today, that truly feels like the homecoming. But also for many of you here today, who this might be their first or second PASS, like myself, I hope you feel welcome. I hope you feel as a part of this big community. I hope also you heard about the last 20 years of Redgate, how we evolved alongside PASS, and how we engage with the database community. But why do we do that? Why do we think it's important to engage, support, and invest in database community? Why did we decide to take on PASS, as Steve described, and run it for all of us here today? At Redgate, we believe that you, database professionals, database administrators, database developers, data scientists, you are the ones that help us to answer important questions about our world. You help us to solve complex problems. You help us to organize and utilize those vast amounts of data. And as a community, I'm pretty sure all of you here today saw what incredible importance data has in the modern world. We've seen it at Redgate, working with our customers, and I'm pretty sure all of us here is convinced that this importance of data will continue for the next 20 years and beyond. But if you don't believe me, here is someone who knows what he's talking about. In 2015, at the Convergence conference, Satya Nadella famously said that every business is a software business. And this quote gets repeated by journalists, analysts, and speakers like myself on big database events. But while this quote gets often repeated for over 7 years, the context of it often gets overlooked. Software really means data. Satya was talking about the importance of software to any business, with the data at the heart of his message. How data becomes ubiquitous, how use of data becomes essential, and how data helps us to transform any business. Satya was also talking about explosive growth in the terms of data storage, data handling, and the way we can process and analyze the data. And as many of you here know today, this shift has created tremendous opportunities. You've been part of it. You've been helping us to advance that. But also it creates significant challenges. And I'm pretty sure this room is full of stories about your own challenges with organizing and utilizing the data. So instead of us jumping straight into how we can help each other and how we can help you to organize those vast and valuable data repositories, I want to talk a little bit about how database landscape has changed. Because it has changed, it is changing, that change is accelerating, and we have to face into it. The first thing I want to talk about is open source. Open source is becoming increasingly critical for database market. We experienced it first at Redgate, many of you as well. We're seeing open source being increasingly popular across all sectors and all segments, including the enterprise. We're seeing open source enabling small niche teams to gain initial traction without the need to demonstrate swift commercial success. Open source also creates a developer flywheel effect when we can leverage myriad of technologies, integrations, third-party tools. Open source is also a powerful vehicle to create your first community, get your first contributors, get your first users, and eventually land your first customers. And that's the case for any part of the database infrastructure software, but also databases. Alongside increased adoption of open source, we're seeing the rise of cross-database estate. And this is something that has been talked for over a decade. And you experience it as well when we surveyed the database community, many of you here today, through the 2021 State of the Database DevOps report. Over 70% told us that they're using 2 or more databases. The vast majority of enterprise organizations, nearly 80%, use 2 or more databases. And for many of you who work for those large organizations, this is not a surprise. Database estate often reflects the history of the company. But when we have added responses for small and medium businesses, over 2/3 told us that they use 2 or more databases. So the one thing is clear, the fragmentation is happening and the fragmentation is accelerating. Fragmentation in terms of the tools, use cases, and database vendors. Many of you probably visit DB Engine's website. This website ranks different database environments. At the moment, that website includes nearly 400 database environments, and each of them offers unique advantages. So we're seeing teams increasingly choosing the right database environment for their job. We're seeing developers gaining more and more influence over decisions of the IT departments. So what databases are developers using? This here is the 2022 Stack Overflow survey when they ask developers what database they use for code reviews or development work. We're seeing the usual variety playing out. We're seeing SQL Server, we're seeing Oracle, but on the top of the list, we're seeing Postgres and MySQL, 2 environments that wouldn't be there a decade ago. This is not a representation of market share. This is what environment development work is happening on. But I think it's quite fascinating to look at our market through the eyes of developers, and perhaps this is also a reflection of what the future database estate would look like. We can also see that not single environment is dominating that ranking. Instead of the top 6 or even beyond are gaining significant traction. And if you add all of those numbers together, they add to more 100%. Many of you know that already. Developers use more than one database. If you don't believe me, here is someone who knows what he's talking about. In November 2022, at the Past Data Community Summit, Steve Jones famously said, multi-database environments are here to stay and the complexity will be growing. So this quote, he only said it 5 minutes ago, and this is already becoming popular and repeated by the speakers. What else is happening? Well, when we surveyed the database community through the same State of the Database DevOps report, many of you told us that the applications are influencing your database choices. And those choices can be influenced by many things, vendors, but more specifically, architectural choices. And one of those architectural choices that gaining increased popularity are microservices. For many of you who are software architects or database architects, microservices are on the top of your agenda list. Microservices that enable agility between dev and the ops teams. But what microservices mean for databases that we have no longer rely on a single database for different data type access or different data types. We can pair the database with the microservice that it enables. And this is exactly what's happening. The applications are going through the decomposition stage, decomposition into several discrete microservices. Those microservices are fully contained, including database system that they use. But the shift to microservices further drives the fragmentation and specializations. The same stakeholders, database developers, software developers, data scientists, are choosing the right environment for their specific use case, depending on performance, cost, locality, resilience, many other important factors. So the one thing is clear, we are not going back to the times of monolithic applications and monolithic database estate. And that means we are dealing with quite a lot of complexity. That complexity is mirrored by the complexity of deployment environments. We all know the increased focus on software release pace and the frequency of software releases. And that leads us to automation. This is what we do at Redgate for databases. But what we are seeing is organizations are increasingly choosing to standardize on tools and approach that enables that automation across all systems that they use. So to do more with less, we have to tame the complexity of the transformation and gain the benefits. Otherwise, we are left with a lot of discrete work and all those different pockets of technology. And only with the standard set of tools and approach, we can increase the productivity, increase the effectiveness, and that enables us to focus on other value-creating initiatives. So at Redgate, we like to think we're here to help. And we provide standard set of tools and approach that helps with the DevOps transformation and drives the automation across multiple database environments. And we call it, not surprisingly, standardize and automate. What we mean by that is to standardizing your deployment across multiple database environments, increasing frequency and reliability of your deployments, providing flexible and portable toolchain, helping you to catch errors early in your integration, and provide overview of all database changes. So now, to talk more about how Redgate products support that vision, I would like to invite to the stage Head of Product Management at Redgate, David Beek.
Well, good morning, everyone. You know, when Steve was talking earlier about Redgate's history, he mentioned a few of the tools that we've produced over the years, things like SQL Prompt and SQL Compare. And of course, the common element across all of those tools has been SQL Server, hence our really subtle naming. And it's been great, too, to be part of the SQL community and to come and meet with you over the years at Summit and at other events. But you know, as we've started speaking more with our customers, we've begun to realize that just solving problems for SQL Server is no longer enough for them. Our customers are seeing the same trends that Jakub spoke about. A big healthcare company that we've been working with recently has a huge SQL Server estate. But over the past couple of years, they've begun adding Postgres to that mix too. And that's really been prompted by a couple of changes for them. The first is that their development teams now have more power than before to choose the systems that are going to support the services that they're creating. And the second is that the company found that for some of their less critical systems, where they didn't need the full power of SQL Server, they could make some cost savings. Recognizing this a few years ago, Redgate approached an open source project called Flyway that some of you may be familiar with. Flyway is a database migrations framework. It's a way to take your database schema from one known state to the next and apply those changes in a controlled way. Importantly, Flyway has been created to work with any database, to give you that standard approach to applying and tracking the changes, but to allow you to use whichever database you prefer and take advantage of it. In fact, Flyway supports more than 25 different databases, ranging from staples like SQL Server through open source options, even to newer cloud-native offerings. In fact, if we look at the current usage breakdown of Flyway, we see Postgres, we see SQL Server, Snowflake, MySQL, and Oracle. We see exactly that mix. So back in 2019, Redgate actually acquired Flyway. And since that time, we've been doing two things. The first is to continue to support it as an open source project. Since Redgate acquired Flyway, we've seen the number of users and downloads continue to grow. And we've had a Redgate team continue to improve the open source project with nearly 700 commits and more than 100 releases in that time. And you know, that open source foundation is really important to us. It gives Flyway's users the confidence that they can rely on it and that they can embed it in their teams and in their processes. But at the same time, we've been rebuilding Redgate's database DevOps tools on that foundation that Flyway provides. And we're calling the result Flyway Enterprise. It sits alongside the free Community Edition, and it gives you richer automation and improved ease of use on top of that base framework. When we thought about how to extend Flyway, we had two design principles in mind. The first was that whether as a developer or as a DBA, you should be able to continue to work the way that you want to, applying your expertise where it most matters. In other words, tools that give you flexibility, but that reduce some of that toil. And our second principle was that while the tools and the approach need to be the same, regardless of which database you choose to use, the changes themselves have to be database specific to let you take advantage of the features and depth of each platform that you've chosen to use. So we're going to take a look at a demo to see some of those principles in action. We're going to start in Flyway Desktop, our user interface, with my development database synchronized to my database project. I'm going to start by creating a new branch in version control for the changes I'm about to make. Now, we've been talking about other databases, so this demo is going to be using Postgres, and we'll use pgadmin to make the changes. That might look a bit alien to some of us, but I think you'll be able to see how the approach here would be just the same, even if I was using SQL and SSMS. I need to make the changes, put them in version control, so that my DBA can review them. In this scenario, we've got a customers table with just a single email field, and I'd like them to be able to register more than one email address. So I'm creating a new emails table and a join table, and then removing the old field from the customers table. And I'm going to use the user interface in pgadmin to make those changes directly on dev. Well, that's all done. So back in Flyway Desktop, I can see that the changes have been detected, and I can save them back to my database project. That's all I need to do here. So I'm going to go ahead and generate the migration script that's going to make these changes on production. This is going to gather together those changes, and I can see the script that will run on prod, and I can edit it if I want to. So for instance, in this case, I need to edit it to add in some lines that will move the email data over to the new tables that I've created. Okay, well, as a developer, I'm all done here. So I'm going to commit my changes, and I'm going to open a pull request, which will be the trigger for the DBA. Great stuff. Now, let's pretend we're now the DBA, and I want to review the changes that the developer has made. I'm going to start by looking at that pull request. This is going to tell me why the work was done and who did it. But more importantly, that same pull request will have kicked off a series of automated tests and reports that are going to help me understand the changes the developer has made. We're going to start off by looking at a change report. This is going to be a visual summary that will allow me to really quickly grasp the scope of the changes that are about to happen on production. It's the difference between the current state of production and what the changes will make it become. I can spot anything the developer might have missed, like foreign keys or indexes, and I can note any areas I want to focus on. You can also see a drift report. This will tell me if production's moved on from the version the developer was expecting. If production's been hotfixed, then the changes might not apply in the right way. But fortunately here I can see everything is still in sync. And then I can see and review the actual script that will be run on production, just to make sure I'm completely comfortable with how these changes are going to get applied to the production server. Finally, I can see a full migration test that's already been run on last night's backup production before I got to the review. This has been spun up just for the test, and the migration has happened exactly the same way that it will happen on the production server, giving me confidence that the scripts here are going to run successfully. So by shifting left, the point at which we create that migration script and do all of the tests, it allows me to catch problems as soon as the developer is done with their changes. I can quickly loop back to them with any changes or comments that I have long before I need to do the deployment. Well, here I'm happy, so I'm going to go ahead and approve their pull request. I can then kick off another pipeline to actually do the deployment, safe in the knowledge it's going to do exactly what we've just seen through all the tests. And here is that deployment pipeline. Here we're going to deploy to Postgres Flex Server on Azure. But I think you can see that this is going to be the same approach We've been using Postgres and GitHub and Azure, but any database and any CI system here can follow the same pattern, whether cloud or on-prem. So, what have we seen? Well, as a developer, I can work directly with a database or with scripts, whichever I prefer. Flyway Enterprise handles for me keeping all the models in sync and the integration into source control. And as a DBA, I could be looped in really quickly, guided by the tests and reports, so that I can focus my expertise on what I can most add to the review. And that same pattern of working can be adopted whether I'm SQL, Postgres, or anything else. I get to use native SQL commands where it most matters, but the approach is just the same. So that's how Redgate has been changing its tools to be able to bring in other databases. But I want to show you one more thing. The curious amongst you might be wondering about that database that we span up for the migration test. Surely doing a restore of production in the middle of a pipeline is just going to be terribly slow. Well, we actually made use of a database cloning capability that we've created. It works for any database, and it sits alongside Flyway. And we're calling it Redgate Clone. We're going to see it in action, but this time for SQL Server. Many of you might be aware of the Stack Overflow database that Brent Ozars made available for the community. Brent, if you're out there, thank you very much, sir. It's a great resource. Only problem is it's 400 gig. And on the laptop I was doing this on, I don't have that much space. So instead, we're going to ask Redgate Clone to give us a copy. Let's take a look at that demo. We're going to start, in this case, in Azure Data Studio at the terminal window. And I'm going to ask Redgate Clone for the database, just giving it the name of the database I want a copy of. Behind the scenes, it's going to bring up SQL Server in a container and attach the data files to it. The magic thing is, it doesn't need to copy the data files to do that, even though I'm going to be able to make changes to that database, and that those changes are only going to be visible to me. So without needing to copy the data, any database, regardless of how big it is, can be brought up in about 30 seconds, and it's already there. I use the connection string to attach to the database, and from this point on, it's just like any copy of SQL Server. I can browse the objects, I can open new query windows, I can do whatever I like. In this case, we're going to check on the size and make sure it really is 400 gig. And then, when I'm done, I can tell Redgate Clone that I no longer need it, and all of the resources are just released. I'm really excited to announce that Flyway Enterprise is available right now for SQL Server and for Oracle. Postgres is currently in preview and will be released later this year, with more databases to follow next year, including MySQL. And Redgate Clone will be released as part of Flyway Enterprise in Q1 of next year. We think that this combination of tools, ease of use for developers, making automation actually work for DBAs, giving you confidence in those deployments, that these are the things that will unlock DevOps for your data. And with that, thank you, and I'll hand back to Jakub.
Thank you, David. Really great to see how Flyway Enterprise and Clone support the DevOps transformation. And we've seen this across multiple database environments, SQL Server, Postgres, Oracle, and at some point MySQL coming as well. And we've seen this approach working on-prem, but also in the cloud. And adoption of cloud databases is another trend that has been accelerating. And I don't think I have to go and explore the advantages. There are many: quicker time to market, simplified innovation, better scalability, limited risks. We can deploy in cloud databases in minutes rather than hours. And we're seeing the increased adoption of cloud databases in some of the ranking and surveys we showed you earlier on, either Stack Overflow or the ones that David showed you. We're seeing the increased adoption of now cloud-native version of database engines we knew for years, but also new database engines that only live in the cloud. Whenever this is Azure Cosmos DB, Amazon Redshift, Snowflake, or MongoDB Atlas. But with all the advantages of the cloud databases, now, and specifically now, we're becoming more aware of its costs. And we have to manage the cloud databases in the most effective way. So what does this supercharged adoption of cloud databases mean for the database community? Cloud requires and enables collaboration at the same time. The same business choices we talked earlier on, whenever this is open source, microservices, or needs of developers driving the fragmentations, are driving part of the estate to be on-prem and in the private or public cloud. And that often in the public cloud through different cloud vendors, depending on performance, regulation, availability. That means that support and delivery model for cloud databases has to evolve. Database professionals, all of us here, can no longer work in the silos. We have to collaborate with teams across the entire application stack. Cloud databases require supercharged collaborations. DBAs are now expected to be data center agnostic and support databases on-prem and in the private and public clouds. So in other words, we are expected to support hybrid database estates. And at Redgate, we believe that the best way to manage those hybrid database estates is through the single pane of glass. So now, to talk more how Redgate monitors supports some of those scenarios, I would like to invite to the stage Solutions Engineering Manager at Redgate, Arne Skandari.
Thanks, Jakub. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here today. As Redgate Solutions Engineering Manager in the North America region, I'd like to talk to you about my team's experience of working with clients in this space. We're fortunate that we have the opportunity to work with hundreds of IT shops across different industries and organization sizes, using database estates across a range of hosting environments. While cloud adoption is undeniably growing and on-prem database footprints are shrinking, from what we're seeing with the data professionals we work with every day, it's clear that on-prem databases aren't going away anytime soon. Lots of data is still being served through traditional means running on local hardware. Another trend we want to highlight is something that Jakub mentioned earlier. While security and performance monitoring for large data estates is mostly centralized and being handled by operations and DBAs teams, decisions about which platforms to use is often left to the individual business units and the application teams, which leads to a wide range of database and hosting platforms being used simultaneously within the same business. And through the work we do, my team have observed 4 key challenges for data professionals when it comes to managing these types of hybrid complex environments. The first one is scalability of existing practices. When scaling performance and security monitoring becomes an issue due to disjointed procedures being followed between on-prem and different flavors of cloud databases. DBAs like some of you find that you're being held back by unfocused and incomplete information, and that your time is still being eaten away by firefighting emerging problems. The second challenge is the complexity of the domain you're expected to master if you work with hybrid data environments. Suddenly, you're expected to be an expert in multiple different platforms and engines, and you need to know how to interpret new performance data and metrics from various different cloud technologies from different cloud providers. Also, having to maintain and monitor multiple dashboards due to varying degrees of control at the OS and database instance level is another challenge that I'm sure those of you working with hybrid estates are very familiar with. You need tailored insights into different types of infrastructure you're managing. And if you don't have that, you're left trying to piece together that narrative from all kinds of sources that may not be immediately comparable. And in the past, when performance issues arose, often the quickest and easiest solution was to throw money at the problem by upgrading to more expensive tiers of cloud offerings. But unfortunately, with the current state of the market and increasing budgetary constraints, it's suddenly much more important to find easier ways to identify bottlenecks in your databases and address them with the overall goal of keeping cloud-related costs as low as possible. Now, so far, I've been talking to you about some of the general challenges in this space that I'm sure are familiar to many of you. Now I'd like to get a bit more specific by describing an example from a Redgate customer we worked with recently. They're a large consulting and financial services organization, a name you've definitely all heard of. And I'm sure my description of their state will sound very familiar to many of you. They've got over 1,000 production database servers with a 50-50 split between on-prem and cloud. They have 4 on-prem data centers across the US and Europe. And on the cloud side, Azure VMs and databases have the largest footprint, followed by AWS EC2s and RDS instances. And those aren't even the only servers they have in their environments. They have other servers within the business that currently don't require any monitoring support from the central data team. But more and more application teams are creating database environments and asking the team for their support. Their estate is already very complex and it's growing. Now, they had a monitoring tool in place, but it wasn't able to scale quickly enough to match the growth and complexity of their hybrid state. And their previous tool's lack of ability to scale meant that portions of their data estate weren't being monitored, or weren't being monitored at a sufficiently granular level. Now, this is a team that spends 90% of their time investigating performance issues for development teams. And their former tool meant that they couldn't offer read-only access to their monitoring dashboards, and instead had to create separate instances for each team. And the ops team, of course, having to chase everything themselves, further complicated an already complex monitoring process. Like many of you, they're also facing business pressure to migrate to the cloud quickly. Their previous monitoring solution didn't offer the ability to monitor their growing state. And this was negatively impacting their company's cloud transition plans, as well as negatively impacting the internal reputation of the team. So eventually, they knew they needed to seek a replacement for their monitoring solution. And they began to explore whether Redgate SQL Monitor could be a good fit. It was clear from their situation that having visibility into their diverse tech and data stack from a single pane of glass was critically important. And to help with that, SQL Monitor provides out-of-the-box monitoring capabilities for key metrics from all the leading cloud providers, such as managed instances and elastic pools in Azure, or individual Azure databases and RDS instances in AWS, and database servers running on Windows or Linux VMs locally or in the cloud. This has given them all the data they need to analyze and report on the health of their entire state, ensuring they're comparing apples to apples. And as Jakub mentioned earlier, collaboration across the IT organization becomes critical in a world of cloud and hybrid environments. And as a web-based solution, SQL Monitor has also enabled them to share insights quickly and easily with those business units and the data owners they support, meaning they can identify problems early and solve them quickly and collaboratively while involving the right stakeholders. And by the way, there's a live demo of SQL Monitor available online that you can access and interact with by visiting monitor.red-gate.com. Also, grappling with the health of their growing database environments was a struggle with their old tool in place. But the robust alerting SQL Monitor offers on a wide range of performance metrics has helped them build a deep and timely understanding of how their environments are performing. They are now much more confident that they can grow their estate without overwhelming the team or risking their reputation. Finally, SQL Monitor offers the ability to scale monitoring across a larger estate by introducing workhorses that can be distributed to different geos and networks without impacting monitoring performance or overhead. Again, this has increased the team's confidence about the ongoing growth of their data estate and their ability to maintain its health as it continues to scale. Now, I've just given you a small taste of SQL Monitor and what it can do for data professionals like some of you who are wrestling with those challenges that complex, growing hybrid states bring. Now, if you'd like to learn more about what it takes to build a tool like SQL Monitor and keep up with all the trends we've talked about today, I'd encourage you to join SQL Monitor's product manager
Ben Emmett later today, where he'll be talking about his team's journey through building a monitoring tool and also some key lessons they've learned along the way. And now you're going to hear more about how your roles as data professionals are evolving in response to the changes and challenges we've talked today from Jakub.
Thank you, Arne. It's really great to see how Redgate Monitor supports those hybrid estates. We also see how it supports different flavors of cloud whenever this is managed instances or elastic pools. So we talked a little bit today about how database landscape is changing. We talked about the increased adoption of open source, microservices, needs of developers driving the fragmentation, and the rise of hybrid database estate. So it's quite clear the domain we're working in is changing. It's changing quite a lot. The change is accelerating. It almost feels like everything is changing. And at Redgate, we like to think that we are keep on the top of those changes. But the one thing it's clear, the role of database professionals is evolving. The need for database-focused professionals is bigger than ever. But what that means for us is that we have to standardize, automate, free ourselves from manual tasks, and that will enable us to focus on the value-creating initiatives. Whenever this is collaborating across IT department, fine-tuning hybrid database estates, or supporting the shift to microservices. At Redgate, our business is about solutions, about support, and engagement with database community. But we are evolving as well. With the domain becoming increasingly more complex and the change accelerating, we are increasingly focusing on support and engagement with community to make sure all of you succeed. And I can't think of a better person to talk about this than customer success engineer. Many of you know her as Redgate advocate, but I'm also being told an official queen of karaoke at PASS, Kati Kellenberger.
Thank you, Jakub. Hello, everyone. I am so happy to see you here today and be here in person in front of you, my SQL family. It's been 3 long years since we've all gotten together in person, and the summit has become a wonderful family reunion for many of us, and this year is more special. It's an amazing homecoming. And welcome everyone who's joining us online for the first time in person and in person for the first time. We're so happy to see all of you here today. And we know many of you have traveled a long way to join us. This is the first hybrid PASS Data Community Summit, and we have people joining us in person online from 56 countries. There are almost 500 different sessions and activities to choose from. This year, we have sessions from 377 speakers. One of our goals is to make sure that new speakers get the chance to speak at Summit. And this year, more speakers than ever before are first-time PASS Summit presenters. I'm passionate about helping new speakers develop, and I'm really proud of the new speakers that we've got this year at Summit and the support we've been able to give them. So let's talk about some other ways that Redgate can help your career. You've all heard Steve talk about the histories of Redgate and PASS and how they've intertwined over the years. And now PASS is part of Redgate. You've heard from Jakub about some of the issues facing all of us who work with data and some of the ways that Redgate can help you with those issues through our products. Now I'd like to talk more about the ways Redgate supports community. I've personally known about Redgate for almost 20 years. And throughout my career, I've watched webinars and read articles from Redgate that have helped me learn new skills and solve problems as a DBA. You know how we work. We are Googling error messages and how to do things all day, right? When my search landed on something from SQL Server Central or SimpleTalk, I always knew it would be something really informative that could help me that I could really rely on to help me solve my issue. Redgate supports the community through SQL Server Central and SimpleTalk, but there's so much more that we do as an organization to help all of you and your colleagues in our profession succeed. Since our early days as a company, We've been committed to helping you get up to speed with the data landscape quickly. Whether you're a brand new DBA or you're an experienced pro who's encountered a sticky problem, Redgate's got your back. Later, I'll be talking to you about some of these resources and how you can get involved with them. But first, I want to walk you through a career journey that might be familiar to some of you. Remember when you were a child and adults would always ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, let's show of hands. How many of you said you wanted to be a DBA or work with data? Oh, one? Okay. I think one person. Great. I've heard a lot of kids, they want to be veterinarians or firefighters. Occasionally I hear doctor or teacher. My little grandson Wyatt here used to say he wanted to take over the world. Yeah, but you know, he's not really thinking too much about working with data. Even though his grandma has had a great career in data and his dad's a DBA, he's more interested in digging holes and getting covered in sand with all the other kids at the beach. Most of us don't end up in the career path we started down at university. I have a friend back home who was a high school math teacher, but now he's a business intelligence developer. I've met literature, sociology, art, dance, economics, theater, and much more. And these folks eventually found their way to technology and data. Like many of you, I have a similar story. When I was really young, I wanted to be a teacher or a writer, preferably both. At the age of 15, I decided on a different career, pharmacy. I was months away from becoming a pharmacist when I typed in that first basic code into a TRS-80 computer. Anybody hear of that computer? Couple people, yeah. It was great. It was like a switch was flipped in my brain. And I'm sure many of you remember that moment in your life when you first got that interest in technology, regardless of your previous career ambitions. 16 years after that first coding experience, I joined a small consulting firm and became a developer. And 5 years later, I was a DBA. The crazy thing is, it's only been about 5 or 6 years since someone has asked me if I can go back to pharmacy if this career doesn't work out. Before I was able to join that consulting firm, becoming a developer was the biggest goal I could imagine. But eventually, I wanted to do more. I started writing by submitting my first article to SQL Server Central in 2005. And I began writing for SimpleTalk a few years later. Over the last 20 years, many of you have contributed articles to SQL Server Central or SimpleTalk, and it's really a great launching point for many of you to take the next step in your career. But it doesn't have to be just writing articles. Many people answer questions on forums on sites like Stack Overflow. The cool thing is that helping someone else solve a problem or learn a new skill will help you learn that topic better as well. When I first began writing, it took me over a month after it was completed to turn it over to Steve because I was so concerned about my own writing abilities. But Steve worked with me and helped me improve my writing skills. Writing led to so many more opportunities, including become the editor of SimpleTalk 5 years later. You may have heard that I've moved on to a new role, and I'll talk about that in a second. But first, what's happening with SimpleTalk? I'm happy to announce that the new SimpleTalk editor is Lewis Davidson, and he's an amazing editor. Lewis is not here in person this year, but I do have a message from him.
Hello, attendees of the Past Data Community Summit 2022. To those of you at the Washington State Community Center right now, I cannot express in actual words how much I wish I was sitting there with you, adding to my memories of that wonderful place. This year, I'm working as a producer for part of the virtual sessions from my office in Cleveland, Tennessee. To those of you virtually attending with me this year, spread around the globe at your desk, coffee shops, parks, or even huddled in your car, These memories too are going to last a lifetime. No matter how you're attending, there's a lot to learn and so many people to meet. Thank you very much.
Yay. So yeah, big round of applause for Lewis. Now that I'm no longer the editor of Simple Talk, you might be wondering what I'm doing at Redgate instead. Earlier this year, I joined the new customer success team as a customer success engineer. It's exciting to be working on a new team and spending time with customers again. But what's customer success? The concept was born around the mid-90s, but it gained a lot of attention 10 years later after Salesforce created a large customer success initiative. They realized that software as a service companies wouldn't survive unless they invested in their customers' ongoing success with their products, not just be concerned about the initial purchase. Customer success teams are the face of the customer inside the organization, helping with onboarding and adoption of the software, ensuring that the customer's needs are met, and that they're getting value out of their software purchase. Finally, the customer will become an advocate for the software, sharing their experiences with their peers. We are really an extension of the customer's team, assisting them with technical issues as they implement the products, providing training, and taking their ideas for new features to the product teams. Our customer success team focuses on helping our enterprise customers get up and running quickly. And here are some of the things that the customers have said about working with our new team. They're telling us that the work we do has saved them time, improved their return on investment, and given them confidence that they will succeed. Even though we have a dedicated team, customer success is part of our entire organization. At Redgate, customer success is who we are. You might be wondering, how does Redgate customer success help you? It's not just through supporting our enterprise customers. Customer success and other teams at Redgate, like the advocates, do many educational webinars and recordings on how to solve problems that all of you have, not just how to use our tools. We also further your ongoing professional education by speaking at conferences and events like this one. You know, we were not able to go to events in person for a couple of years, but Redgate still did what it could for the community, even if it was remote. While being remote, we all spent a lot more time at home and a lot more time trying to keep our children occupied while we tried to work. It was the same for Redgaters, too. So we decided to start the Kids Coding Club. Some of our developers took time out of their day to do these coding classes live. And you can still find the videos on YouTube if you know someone who'd like to take the class. I really love that Redgate did this because I want everyone to at least be exposed to coding. You never know which kids will decide that they want to work in tech. I know that first glimpse of code back at university really changed my life. There was a lot of uncertainty when the lockdowns began. Would companies cut training budgets? Would they lay off employees? I remember getting together with my team members to come up with ways we could help the data platform community. We decided to create some industry-related courses that would be free for the community to help them learn some new skills such as T-SQL, DAX, query tuning, and a bunch more. Our manager said that creating these classes was our top priority for a couple of months. And you can still watch these courses today on Redgate's Community Circle page to gain new data platform skills. Okay, well, this would not be a keynote without at least one more announcement, right? There are countless people who drive the database community forward each day through their thought leadership, influence, and what they give back to the community. This year, we launched the Redgate 100, a list of the top online influencers in our community. With our debut Redgate 100 list, we want to recognize and celebrate those individuals for their knowledge sharing, their illuminating perspectives, and for making the company what it is today. Since launching this list, we've enjoyed seeing the community jump on board, singing well-justified praises, and congratulating those who've been included. Dozens of the Redgate 100 are here with us today, so before we move on to the rest of the day, I want to ask if any of the audience members are part of the Redgate 100, please stand up. Don't be shy. All right. We really encourage you to spend time with all the people from this list who are here at Summit. Go ask their advice, and you can hang out online in the virtual conference too if you're watching from online. Take this opportunity to learn from globally recognized experts in the data field and use their input to develop your own careers. With 9 subcategories, including our ones to watch and community heroes, this is also your chance to work on your insight sharing game on social media. Some of you in the room today might already be on track to make next year's list. Thanks for joining us for the Redgate Keynote. We hope the rest of your time at Summit is valuable and really, really fun. So make the most of it and have a fantastic time today.